Have you ever felt that sudden, cold prickle of sweat on the back of your neck when you open your banking app? You stare at the screen, and for a split second, your heart stops because the number staring back at you isn't what you expected. Imagine, just for a moment, that you are standing in a crowded grocery store line. The person behind you is impatient. The cashier is waiting, and you look down at your total. You expect to see a 1 followed by 3 zeros, 1,000, a manageable sum. But instead, those zeros have simply vanished into the digital ether. You are left staring at a solitary 1. In that heartbeat, your entire sense of security, your plans for the month, and your financial pressure skyrocket. That missing digit isn't just a symbol on a glass screen. It represents your ability to eat, to stay warm, and to navigate the complexities of modern existence. We live in a state of constant time anxiety, obsessively checking the numbers on our clocks and the balances in our accounts. Yet we rarely stop to ask what these numbers actually are. We treat them as heavy, solid things, but their power often comes from the spaces between them. This brings us to the one big idea of our journey today. We often think of nothing as a void, a lack of value, or failure. In our productivity-obsessed culture, a 0 usually means you've come up empty-handed. But in the grand architecture of mathematics and the long, winding history of our civilization, nothing, or 0, is actually the most powerful something ever discovered. It is the invisible architect of your reality. Without this placeholder for emptiness, the very structures of our modern life would not just tilt, they would utterly collapse. Your bank account wouldn't just be lower, it would be uncomputable. Your GPS wouldn't be able to find your street. The stars will remain an impenetrable mystery, distant lights without a story. Today, I want to take you on a journey from that momentary panic in your checkbook to the very center of a black hole, because understanding the 0 at the center of the universe is the only way to truly understand the value of your own life. We're going to look at the ghost in the machine and realize that nothing is the very fabric that holds everything together. Most of us grew up thinking of mathematics as a set of chores, a gauntlet of dry formulas, repetitive homework, and a source of deep-seated certainty that we felt we could never quite reach. We were taught that math is a school subject, a hurdle to be cleared before real life begins. But I want to challenge that today. Mathematics is not a human invention designed to categorize the world or torture students. It is a lost language of nature itself. The great Galileo, peering through his primitive telescope at the moons of Jupiter, realized that the laws of nature are written in the language of mathematics. He saw that the universe wasn't a chaotic mess of happenstance, but a structured masterpiece. When we find math hard or boring, it's often because we've forgotten how to speak this native tongue. We see the physical world, the things we can touch, the weight of a stone, the heat of the sun, and we struggle to connect it to the abstract world of numbers. We feel a friction between what is real and what is mathematically certain. This friction was perhaps best understood by Albert Einstein. He once noted that as far as the laws of mathematics refer to reality, they are not certain. And as far as they are certain, they do not refer to reality. This is a profound, almost soulful realization. It tells us that math is the bridge. It is the only tool we have to see the invisible forces that govern our lives. You cannot touch gravity, yet you can calculate the trajectory of a falling apple or a launching rocket with breathtaking precision. You cannot see the future of population or the long-term yield of an investment, but you can use math to peer through the fog of time. People struggle with math because it requires us to step out of the physical and into the abstract to find certainty in a world that is constantly changing. And at the heart of this bridge, standing as the most misunderstood word in the entire language of nature, is zero. It is a point where the physical and the abstract meet and do a strange, infinite dance. To understand why zero is so vital, we have to look back at how we discovered it. It wasn't invented in a laboratory or by a decree. It was discovered as a deep philosophical truth. In the ancient world, people could count their sheep, their children, or their coins, but they lacked a way to discuss the absence of those things as a number with its own right to exist. If you had an empty plate, you simply had an empty plate. You didn't have 0 apples. You had a lack of apples. The journey began with simple placeholders. The Babylonians, as early as 400 BC, began using wedge-shaped marks to show that a space in a number was empty. But these weren't zeros as we know them. They were more like punctuation marks, keeping the other numbers from bumping into each other. Across the ocean, the Mayan civilization developed an incredibly sophisticated system. They used a symbol that looked like a snail shell to represent zero, combined with a system of dots and bars. For the Maya, zero was linked to the calendar and the cycles of time, a way to mark the completion of one cycle and the beginning of another. However, the true mathematical and philosophical breakthrough happened in India. Here, the concept of Śūnya, meaning emptiness or nothingness, took on a life of its own. Ancient Indian mathematicians and astronomers like Pingala, as far back as 300 BC, began laying the groundwork for binary systems and mathematical structures. Later, the brilliant Aryabhata and the foundational Brahmagupta began to treat this emptiness not just as a void, but as a functional number that you could add, subtract, and multiply. In his 7th century astronomical text, Brahmagupta defined zero as a result of subtracting a number from itself. This was a revolutionary shift in human psychology. We weren't just looking at an empty space anymore. We were looking at a value. This idea began a great migration. It traveled through the Khmer Empire, and we have the physical proof of this moment carved into history. In Cambodia, an inscription known as K 127, dating back to 683 AD, shows a small dot or circle, the first physical zero of its kind. It was used in the number 605, positioned perfectly between the 6 and the 5 to give them their proper weight. Imagine the artisan in 683 AD, hammer and chisel in hand, carefully carving nothing into stone so that the something around could be understood. From Southeast Asian India, the concept moved into the Arab world. The mathematician Muhammad al-Khwarizmi, whose name gives us the word algorithm, refined the use of zero in his work, and was eventually the Italian merchant Leonardo Fibonacci, who, in the 12th century, brought these Hindu-Arabic numerals to Europe. Before zero, Europeans were stuck with Roman numerals. Try doing long division with 17 and CXLIV, and you'll realize why progress was so slow. Zero gave us the place value system. Think about the sheer power of that. A 1 by itself is just 1, but put a 0 next to it, and it becomes 10. Put another and it's 100, then 1,000. The presence of nothing is the only thing that gives something its true power and scale. An empty plate might mean you are hungry, but a series of zeros in the bank account means you have the power to change your world. The nothing creates the magnitude of the something. Once humanity mastered nothing on Earth, we began to see it reflected in the heavens. This is where the story of zero moves from the ledger of a bank to the heart of a black hole. when we look at the universe through the lens of physics. Zero stops being a mere placeholder and becomes a doorway to the infinite. Consider Isaac Newton's law of gravity. Newton gave us a language to describe how every object in the cosmos pulls on every other object. His formula is a masterpiece of balance. It tells us that the force of gravity depends on the masses involved and the distance between them. But there is a ghost in this machine. As the distance between two objects gets smaller and smaller, approaching zero, the math does something terrifying. Because we are dividing by, as that denominator nears zero, the total force doesn't just get bigger, it approaches infinity. This isn't just a quirk of the chalkboard. Albert Einstein took this realization and used it to redefine the fabric of space and time. He described a zero point in the universe, what we now call a black hole. This is a place where an immense amount of mass is crushed into a region of zero volume. At this precise point, our traditional math breaks. The density becomes infinite, and the language of nature, as we currently speak it, starts to stutter. The black hole is a physical manifestation of the number zero in the very fabric of the cosmos. It is a place of absolute emptiness that nevertheless holds entire galaxies together with its gravitational grip. We see the same zero point when we look inward toward the infinitesimally small world of atoms. In superstring theory, scientists explore the idea that everything is made of tiny, vibrating string loops. The math here reveals a stunning paradox. As the pressure on these strings drops toward zero, the energy within them can become infinite. Conversely, if the pressure increases toward infinity, the energy paradoxically decreases. It is a world where nothing holds more energy than everything. This tells us something profound about our mindset. If we can understand the zero at the center of an atom, we can begin to understand the zero at the center of our lives. The universe isn't just a collection of stuff. It is a delicate web held together by the mathematical relationships that exist at the very boundary of nothingness. You might be wondering, what does a 7th century Khmer inscription or the energy of a vibrating string loop have to do with you today in your actual life? How do we translate this high-level physics into something that helps us deal with work stress or the crushing time anxiety of a Tuesday afternoon? The answer lies in understanding the nature of patterns and systems. In mathematics, we often talk about a sequence denoted as. This is just a way of describing a list of values that follow a specific rule. Even the most complex sequence, the kind that describes the growth of a tech giant or the path of a hurricane, starts with simple counting. 1, 2, 3. There's a vital lesson here. Progress beats perfection. Every massive achievement, every full bank account, and every masterpiece started at the zero point, the moment before the first step was taken. If we look at the formula for an arithmetic sequence, we can see the blueprint for a successful life. Here is your starting point, your 0 point. The variable is the time you spend and is the common difference. In life is the small, boring, incremental effort you make every single day. The math shows us that it isn't the starting value that creates the massive result, but the consistent accumulation of that small difference over time. 0 is the starting line that makes the rest of the sequence possible. But perhaps the most important practical takeaway is the value of the gap. Just as a 0 provides the necessary gap between numbers to give them their place value, transforming a 1 into a 10, we as humans need gaps to give our lives meaning. If you work constantly, filling every second with something, without a 0 point of rest, your efforts lose their magnitude. You become a long string of ones without any zeros to provide scale. You are busy, but you aren't growing. We need periods of nothingness, of rest, reflection, and silence to allow our values, such as our work, our family, and our passions, to reach their full potential. Understanding nothing isn't about being empty. It's about creating the space for your something to grow. When you feel overwhelmed by the work stress of the world, remember that the zero in your schedule, that hour doing absolutely nothing, is just as mathematically important as the one in your tasks. It is the placeholder that gives the rest of your life its value. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to leave you with a sense of wonder rather than weight. We have traveled from the panicked look at a banking app through the ancient, sun-drenched stones of Cambodia and into the infinite, dark depths of a black hole. It can feel overwhelming to realize that we are just small points in an infinite universe, but there's an incredible, quiet beauty in that realization. The late, brilliant mathematician Mary Mirzakhani once said, "You have to spend some energy and effort, but you can see the beauty of mathematics." She wasn't just talking about solving equations. She was talking about the courage to look at the emptiness and find a pattern. She knew that math isn't about getting the right answer on a test. It's about the soul's ability to find order in the void. When you realize that the same math that governs the pull of the stars also governs the growth of your savings and the rhythm of your heart, you stop feeling like a stranger in the universe. You are a part of the language of nature. Being in nothing, a single small person in an infinite cosmos, isn't scary. It is actually the very thing that makes you part of the system. You are a placeholder of immense potential value. Just like the 0 in the K 127 inscription, you have a place, and that place gives meaning to everything around you. Math is the tool that proves we are not alone. We are part of a structured, beautiful, and deeply logical reality. So, the next time you see a 0, don't just see a hole or a void. See it as a symbol of the infinite potential that exists in every moment of silence and every small step of progress. You don't need to fear the nothingness. It is the very foundation upon which your everything is built. Thank you for spending this time with me, exploring the invisible lines that connect our world. Remember to find your gaps, embrace your patterns, and always look for the beauty in the laws that hold us all together. Take care and stay curious.